It's like what I mentioned earlier. We're in a toxic relationship with the government and the people. We've been blinded by nostalgia. Every time the elections come about, we're reminded of the very harsh past
No.
we have. Just like how an abusive husband would try and remind a wife of the abusive childhood she had, so that she could be convinced that the abuse she endures in
Yeah.
her marriage with him is nothing compared to the one she experienced as a kid and could also be right. I
Yeah.
don't care how much abuse you went through before, no amount of abuse is right. The ANC has convinced its people
Yeah.
in South Africa that no matter how much wrong they do, it's somehow right and we should still vote for them because they freed us that one time in 19...
Radio Nuwe Lied. Klets, kuier, luister en leer in Afrikaans. Jou Christelike lewenswyse radiostasie.
Klets met Corné.
Gesels saam oor alles.
En nog wat.
Good day, good friends of South Africa. Welcome. My name is Corné and welcome to Klets met Corné, which in English would be Chat with Corné. You're on Radio Nuwe Lied. We're Afrikaans station, but today we do this in English because I am so honored and glad to have with you the man, the legend, the Sama Sambit. Sama, thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you for getting me here. Very great opportunity, to spread the word. And I don't know about the legend, man. I'd be called infamous is more accurate, especially for people like me nowadays.
Yeah. Well, whatever it is, you are a talking point of people who's inquiring around a bit, at least. For some people, they just go with the flow and whatever. But for the rest of the people, they are aware. So thank you so much for your time. And I hope we can get to some meaningful discussions and just get to know you a bit as well. So I think that's the first thing. In my mind, I call you part of the brave bunch.
Wow,
I reckon myself and that thing as well. We've been talking about kind of some people call it obscure, but not we're not trying to be rebels or anything. We just talk truth. It feels to me and common sense. But now that common sense is a dangerous topic by the looks of it. So you're in a similar situation, I think. So I feel like a kindred spirit with you in that regards. And first, just to start off with two things. Well done and good luck, I guess. But for somebody, and I was shocked by how young you are still. But for somebody as young as you, to speak up is amazing, because you've probably heard this, but for me, it's just, if we say you can't do your job, can we please somebody to do the job? It's racist. If you say it is, I don't know what, it's a step further than that, I guess. You can't be called racist, but I don't know what to call you. But it is
they
not.
Call me a lot of things.
Good boy. So well done, man. It is. I think it's vitally important for we try to be the other side of the coin. I don't mind what people choose, what they believe in. But I would like, just from our side, from a radio station's point of view, we like to call ourselves like a voice of hope and truth. So can I just give you another angle? Because if you go to mainstream media, it's not a problem. But you see one side of the story. So can we show you the other side of the story, and then you decide? Should be normal in my mind, but as you know and you experience yourself, it is not necessarily. Let's start at the beginning. Just a little bit of background about yourself. Where were you born, and where did you grow up, and what was childhood like for you?
So my little noodle self was born in the Little Krugersdorp Hospital in the year 2006. I was born to a South African mother who was from the Eastern Cape. And from then onwards, I really grew up here. We never really migrated as such, as the other South African families were in the mid-2000s, because that was a time of movement. It was a big step for the country economically. But we were one of the lucky bunch to actually stay. And both my parents had gotten jobs over here. So they had their own thing going, and we were able to, fund our own needs, wants and needs over here, and grow the family. And I grew up here with my siblings, went to a Catholic school. Nothing really out of the ordinary, just regular things you'd expect should be there for your average child. And it was about the age of 16 when I was, in my final years in high school that I really realized that, I had a different voice from everybody else. And not only should I use that to my advantage, I should also use it for the help of others. One of the many things our Catholic priests used to tell us in the classroom is that you must be a champion of the weak. God creates champions not so that they can continue to glorify themselves and the superior, but they create champions so that they can uplift the weak, uplift those who simply are not able to do what you do. Like a student who understands a certain mathematical concept in the classroom, they shouldn't hesitate for a second to help the one who doesn't. And that's the philosophy I was taught about life, always help the other, always bring the other up. That's how you build community. That's how you grow each other, always stay in the state of grace. And it was really around there that I decided to really spread my wings and, venture out in the open.
It's amazing. So I guess your faith as part of this thing, because, you need to wonder with somebody as young as you are speaking the way you do and with the conviction that you do, what was your childhood like? Because you don't find that. I mean, you went to normal schools, kind of a normal-ish upbringing. What was different about you that made you, realize that, wait a minute, something needs to be said, and I feel a responsibility somehow to say this stuff. So something must be different. Do you think your faith has got something to do with that? What?
For sure. God has a hand in our lives always, even in times we feel like he isn't present at all, in times like depression and hardship. And, I can say God really had a hand in my life because of, my childhood. I never had it the roughest. There were definitely rough patches, but I certainly know that I didn't have it the roughest. Some kids have gone through very terrible things in my country. And, going to a nice little private Catholic school where I could engage with not only people of my race, but people from all sorts of communities, in schools like mine, it was so diverse in cultures and community. There was always the Muslim kid in the classroom who was trying to convert. There was always the pagan child, the Jewish child, the Dutch Reformed child, all these different people from different places here to share their experiences and learn with you. And that taught me one thing. It didn't matter where you came from. It didn't matter what your circumstances were. When you're in the classroom, a human is a human, right? And that ended up being my fundamental view of life. Humans are humans, and we were all made in the image and likeness of God, which brought about my studies in, hard times of hardship in our country, like the slave trade and apartheid, the Holocaust and all of that. That's what intrigued my study, because these were times in history where humans did not see each other as humans of the same nature. They didn't see each other as souls that were made by the same being that made their soul. And that right there is what really got me thinking that I need to say something, because the moment I got out of that very comfortable environment, you can say that's really when I started to see how the world really worked. I started to see the racial tension, economic tension I initially thought didn't exist because I was a child who was fortunate enough to grow up in a society where such implications didn't exist for me. And because such implications never existed for me, I was able to unlock a certain mindset within myself that told me that no matter where your brother is from, your brother will always be your brother, no matter how distant. And the moment I got out of school, that's when I realized that it doesn't work like that everywhere else. And some people do need help. It's not always the same as how it is on your side. You can never assume or expect it to have to be the same flow as your side. You can never expect the guy next door to be drinking the same clean water you're drinking, or to be having it as easy as you do. And that's when I realized that, this is my time. This is my time to step in. It is my time to help. It is my time to be the voice of the voiceless youth who have been oppressed for years, who've had it 10 times harder than I have, who also don't have the voice that I have, and that really was the turning point in my life where I realized that no matter how many consequences may come about, I'm going to do what I always wanted to do. And that was to be a powerful voice, and now that I've been invited to radios like these, I know I'm making progress, right?
You sure are. Listen, but it's such a great point, man, that you mentioned about your studies, all the kind of looking at history, because I feel it's such a missed opportunity in schooling that children look at history as like old stories or whatever. It in my mind, there's a reason it used to be part of a classical upbringing, like the arts, history, philosophy, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because if you look at history, in my mind, if they left all the names like it is and all the statues like it is, I can understand that somebody looks at a name and says, I remember that was bad. But that's the point of it. If you can look at history and say, let's not do that again. Don't take away the symbols of it. See the symbol and remember what happened here, and let's not do it again. But people don't know history, and because I think there's such a problem because people don't know history, and then we keep on doing the same. And I think that's part of the story of our country is we are running the same track all over again in a different way. But it's a similar story, and we did not learn from previous mistakes. And the problem with that is, I don't have a specific point about our, politics that I want to talk to you about today. It's like just a general discussion. But I think from where I'm standing, part of the problem is if you want to go back, it's always go back to, but it's apartheid, it's this, it's that. There's a lot of things to be said for and against it. But the problem is, if you want to go back in history, up to where do we go back? Up to where do we give land back? Up to where do we go back to find kind of peace? If we should go back to Europe, then where should the Europeans go back to? Do we push back to Eden? Where's the line? And I suspect there is no line. You cannot live in the past and go forward. You need to make peace somewhere and step forward. That's always, and I think the problem is in our country. I always think this is my mind picture. We've got about say 60 million people here. 50 million people are like me and you, more or less. They can see the king doesn't have his clothes on, but you're not allowed to say anything, you get in trouble. So they kind of the quiet 50 million. 10 million are like, wow, noisy bunch, doing silly stuff and getting everybody in trouble. But the 50 million are so much more, but they're quiet, which is the problem. And I think that's why a voice like yours is crucially important, because such a lot of people feel like you, and I mean, you realize that, but they won't say anything. And I understand that. I mean, not everybody, I've got good friends, really good friends, and we were talking about, opening your mouth and doing the right thing and blah, blah. And she said to me, listen, I understand there's better things to do and better things to say, but I really, at this stage of my life, I just want to get home, open my wine, and look at the sunset. That's what I want to do. I understand the price. I'm not prepared to pay that. I want to rather be comfortable. And I think for a lot of people, it is that. And fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know. I'm not wired that way, and by the looks of it, you neither. So we need to be a voice for the 50 million who feels the same way, and it's sad in a way.
Definitely.
What do you think about the influence of media? Because I think if we can shut down media for like a year, we'll have another country. I tell you what, if I go into the ShopRite or I go into the clothing store or I put in petrol, I don't feel the vibes that they tell me we have. Are there problems? Are there racist? Are there any kind of... Obviously there are. But most people, I tell you, are not like that. I don't feel the animosity when I just move between people in our country.
Definitely.
I think the media is... Give me your take on that. What do you think the media's role is here? Why is it like that? Why is there only one side of the story? What is the deal?
There's no doubt the media has played a massive part in increasing tension amongst the people. But at the same time, Mr. Cohen, that's the way they make money, right? And it may be hard to believe right now for the average person walking down the street, but if you came to them and told them that as you stand there, there is a boardroom of people with shiny suits, drinking cappuccinos, deciding on what you get to consume 24/7 and what you don't get to consume for the specific goals they want you to reach, they wouldn't believe you. You know, they'd laugh at you in the face because that sounds too conspiracy-like to be true. But it's true. All these media outlets we all listen to in our everyday lives, the SABC, ENCA, Newsroom Africa, they're all controlled by people in a boardroom who make decisions about what they're going to report and what they won't. And because of that, you create a very opinionated society. The media has created a very opinionated society, not only because of the intentions they have for us, but also because of the amount of money they've been making out of us very opinionated. Can you imagine how much money the mainstream South African media has made in the last year and a half because of the Julius Malema saga and the racial tensions with the white farmer killings? They made so much money. I can bet
it is worth millions, man.
Exactly. And, you know, the people listening to this podcast as well can't even fathom the amount of money they've made. And you want to know what else they can't fathom? They cannot fathom the amount of videos, articles, essays that were published to them for them to read regarding the saga. You know, that's just, they want to make money. Once they see something and they see a chance to milk as much out of it as they can, they will do just that. But now, you mentioned taking down the media as a solution. It could be, but at the same time, we're taking down the very same outlet that made us united. You know, there's many reasons why the media would argue for their stay, right? The media are the ones making us watch the Rugby World Cup and for us to be united together. It's the media telling us about all these heroic stories. It's the media that tells you about the Sama Sambit, even though they don't like him that much, you know? And as a result, if you were to shut down the media, they just simply look for another way to influence us all. Before the media, there was already a media, the newspaper, the radio, you know, all of that. And one of the many ways they influence us is from the early stages. You know, you mentioned many South Africans of this generation don't know history. And you couldn't be more right. We don't. But that's not entirely our fault. It is our fault that we do not bother to go and actually look down the memory lane. But it is also the fault of our superiors for not supplying us with the proper tools that were required from the very early stages. You know, like the school child at school. You see the history books they read and you wonder what value that will add to their life. You know, you see everything they learn in there. It will do absolutely nothing for them. Even if they choose to become archaeologists or historians in the future, the history they learn is not relevant. I'm not saying history is irrelevant or some parts of history are more important than others. But what I am saying is there is no point in teaching a child history if you're just going to teach him something that's going to be of no value to him later. Right? It always depends on the value. If you're going to teach a child about slave trade and make it as one-sided as you possibly can, well, then, of course, the child will not only be completely dull and ignorant about the slave trade, he will have a deep hatred for the people that you villainized in those very same textbooks, the white people. Right? The history books don't tell you about the other races that were involved in the slave trade. They don't tell you about the 70% of Jewish families who were involved in the slave trade. What they do tell you is that it was the blacks and the whites, and there was nobody else. And then the colored people appeared somehow, somewhere, somehow in the 40s and 50s. It's all mixed up and intentionally one-sided. But of course, when someone like me calls this out, they'll say, no, don't listen to Sama. You know, he's crazy. He's a sellout. He's a rebellion. Don't watch him because he's going to make you rebel. The question you should ask when they tell you that about me is they make him rebel. Well, rebel against what? That should be the main question. You know, rebel against what? Is it wrong for me to say we've only been taught one side of history? You know, is it wrong for me to say our people only know one side of history? Is it wrong for me to willfully admit that our people have been exploited mentally to only know a single side of history so that a certain race of people can be villainized forever and ever, and the other races keep their hands clean, even though their coattails are not? You know, it's many things like that. And you mentioned also going to the local places and not experiencing any racial tension at all. There isn't, because South Africa's a rainbow nation, and the media didn't, come here many years ago. They came here just yesterday compared to the age of our mother, South Africa. We've lived with each other long enough to know that no one is going to come in our way to try and make us fight with each other. But at the same time, there'll always be the rotten apples that always rely on what the media has to say. If the media says jump, they will jump. If the media says villainize white people, they will do just that. Some people you walk past in ShopRite as a white person or someone of racial minority, like a colored or Indian South African. Some black people who look at you won't show that they have racial tension, but they just keep it to themselves. And then some can't do that, obviously, and they're unprofessional about it. And it's vice versa. That's what the media does to vulnerable people. And it is the job of myself and those who have my voice to call this out, to save our people from doom, really. Many people I used to look up to used to say, Sama, when you grow up, and if you really want to do this, first make your money and then you go to war. Well, I decided to take the dumb path and go to war while making my money. And well, let's see how that goes.
On the thing of news, I always, in my mind, when I think about news, I say to people, news is not necessarily fact. News is what somebody wants you to know. That's why they call it a press conference. If the government wants you to know something, they'll call the press together. They'll have a press conference. Then all the radio stations in the country every morning go log onto the news portals, download the news for the day and read it to you. There's no investigation. There's no fact checking. There's nothing of that. It's just somebody wants you to know something and they give it to you. And that's the importance of listening to all sides of the story and listen to, I don't know whether you want to call it independent media or I don't know what it is, what we do, but you need to get that information as well if you're looking for truth, in my mind, because otherwise you just get what somebody wants you to know and you never think beyond that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I want to ask you now is I've got, it's like under a general heading, I guess, of what you think about the future of our country. In my mind, I think I see three different options currently. The one is you need to vote for the biggest opposition party to get us out of the mess that we're in. The second one is we can't work with party politics. It will not get us anywhere because there's always this thing of it's a difficult system to change. It's difficult to get a lot of people to move the loyalty, let's call it that, for a big party like the ANC, who's got a very emotional, I think, attachment to it's their party and the people that free them. And then the third one is my least favorite options, but also one that I'm actually more prepared to look at than what we are sitting in. And that is the thing of let's split up this whole thing. Because what I do realize about South Africa that will make us so unique in the world, I think it is already unique in the world. I do not know of a single country on earth that's got our diversity, that managed to find a way to let people stay together like in one country. Usually like split it up in like whatever, regions or cantons or whatever they call it. But they split it up culturally. And we are trying to fight. And that my plan A is this thing. I believe that we can all work and stay together. I really believe that.
That's true. Yeah, I agree.
But it is not an easy thing. And I think we need to kind of at least realize that and accept that it is a big challenge. I can't see it anywhere else on earth. That's why Europe has got like little countries and blah, blah, blah. But what is your personal kind of opinion of the future of South Africa? Do you go with one of those three options? Do you believe it's possible? Where do you stand on this?
Well, South Africa is one of the most heavily influenced countries by media. Right? Before the media really started grabbing us by the throat, we were doing quite well. We had no load shedding. Our economy was doing well. But then the moment the smoke of Satan from the West started to really enter the country, that's when you started to see a lot of more tension, unnecessary tension, as I like to call it, because it was simply tension that didn't have to be there in the first place. It was tension that was created to make some elites a lot of money. right? The elites that run our big boy media groups are the ones really enjoying and sipping the imported wine right now. It's us that are arguing and suffering with each other. The ideology I love to use in South Africa's case is when you shake the jar of ants, the ants will always fight each other because the ants are not smart enough to ask who shook the jar, right? They always assume it was the other ant that did it, even though the ant is not big enough to carry an entire jar alone. In South Africa, South Africans are the ants. The ones who shake the jar is the media. And instead of thinking about who shook the jar and doing whatever we can to stop these people from exploiting our brothers and sisters, all colors and all cultures, what we do is we fight amongst each other because there is no trust amongst each other, right? We always think it's the other guy who did it. There's no way the media could do it because the media tells me the truth. I know. So South Africa without the media would do fantastically well. I'm sure you can also imagine a South Africa that is not influenced by any external source. A South Africa where, we're all dancing to the same kwaito and amapiano music and where all kids of all colors are going to the same schools. And, there's no black kid in the township who has to go and carry water or no white kid who has to feel like he's out of line or doesn't fit in when he's in a black dominated school. A South Africa like that is very possible. But as long as we continue to have Western influences and again, the elites who continue to shake the jar and make us unnecessarily fight with each other, there will always be tension. It doesn't hurt to have a South Africa where we see each other as human beings and we do whatever we can to help our fellow South Africans. It doesn't hurt for us to welcome legal foreigners. That doesn't hurt at all. But the media will do whatever they can and whatever it takes to make it look like it hurts. And as long as they make it look like it hurts, we will do whatever we can to make the hurt stop. If you get what I'm saying, it's like scratching an itch that's not even there. We're fighting a problem that shouldn't even exist in the first place. The moment we see a headline on the news about racism at Pretoria Girls High School, the nation is shaken. Right? Instead of having it handled properly, it has to be uploaded to the news and the radio so that we can tell the black people about how evil these white dominated schools are. You can sometimes just smell the phony and you can sometimes see through what these people are trying to do with us. And it's also really sad because what that tells me is that there's a bunch of South Africans out there who consume as much as possible from mainstream media, believe everything it tells them, and do whatever they say they must do. In the end, they don't become themselves anymore. They are just a weapon of the media. The media will never make its most money because the only time the media will make its most money is when we are completely its weapons. They are fighting for our brains and the price is our soul. We should control the computer, but we should never let the computer control us. And, as long as we keep fighting the good fight, as long as we never let that happen, as long as we never sell our souls to the mainstream media, we'll continue to be in a good place. And we will forever continue to have God's hand in our society and continue to be the rainbow nation we are,
Yeah. Okay. Personal question, just are you planning on ever going into politics? Do you think you should just be a voice from the outside? Where do you see yourself in this whole picture?
Well, honestly speaking, as of now, there's no current plans of going into politics. That one I've always asked myself as a question of, will I do it in the long run? There's still a lot of time for me to continue to expand and increase my experience and become more and more of a formidable foe on the field of politics. It's a large world in there. And the last thing I want to do is to be a small fish with a giant head in a large pond, right? Of all these sharks that are just waiting to eat me up because I'm this young guy who's never experienced a single thing like that in his entire life. So will I do politics now? No, but you can never say never when you fast forward 20 years, 10 years, 30 years. Then as the time goes on, the more I have a chance of getting in there. The chances of me getting into politics as time goes on will be much higher than now. Right now, I'd say it's more about building the foundation,
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you think about politics, in my mind, it should be. There needs to be almost a kind of a age thing, not old people, but some kind of wisdom and experience and things that they don't necessarily go together, as we know. But there should be that kind of thing, and that's part of my problem with the way it's done at this moment. The people in power seems to be running the thing not like leaders on behalf of the people, civil servants that run the country on our behalf. It feels like a king with his kingdom that can demand things and declare things, take and distribute things like it's a kingdom instead of a country with a democracy system, more or less. I had a friend who said that our country's biggest
runs functionally.
Yeah,
even kingdoms run functionally with people living happily ever after. I wouldn't call it a kingdom. Really. This is a tyrannical
bad kingdom.
Yeah, it's very
bad
kingdom,
man.
This is a very, very tyrannical kingdom where the king and the king alone makes the decisions, even though he's convinced 60 million people that there's a government of national unity that discusses the decisions with them.
How does it happen, Sama, that you can look at a problem, but if you mention it, you're the bad person? How do we get to a place? I tell you, I sometimes feel like I'm in a parallel universe. It feels to me like a common sense thing and just normal discussion, and calling something out without. I mean, there's a lot of things that me and you will disagree on a lot of things, but there's no more place for that. It feels to me like people turned into, I don't know what it is. You can't mention differences. You can't point out, listen, this dude is black, I'm white. There's nothing wrong with either one. But we're different.
Yeah.
You can't say anything. You can't notice anything that's different. You can't. So forget about, calling out stuff that's not right. That is even worse. But how did we get to a place where you can't say logical, common sense stuff anymore? It is a weird place that we live in. Tell you what.
It's a tyranny, and the ones who suffer the most are the people. And then it's the governments within the government of national unity, because they've been fooled into thinking that they actually have a say in the decisions that happen. If the DA had a say, or the IFP, or Action SA, or the FF Plus had a say in what goes on in the GNU, had a part of what to say, then Andrew Whitfield wouldn't have been booted out like how you boot out expired chakalaka from the fridge. Right, he was kicked out just like that from the get-go, from none other than the tyrannical leader himself, Ramaphosa. Right, Andrew Whitfield didn't do a single thing wrong. He was calling things out, doing what a deputy president does: question the leader, speak for the people, and speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That is they're all made to say and recite before they are put into such positions of power. But what we've seen is nothing but lies. They've said anything but the truth recently, and they wanted to lie to us when the USA had us by the throat earlier this year, until they slapped 30% tariffs and they couldn't hide it anymore. It's an abusive relationship between the president and the people, because not only are things being hidden, the more days go on, the less and less of a say we have in power, to power. Right? If Ramaphosa says one thing, then we do what Ramaphosa says and nothing else. If Steenhuisen says another thing, then forget about Steenhuisen, even though he's part of the GNU. I thought a GNU was supposed to be a group of you discussing, sharing ideas with each other for the better of this country, and agreeing to a decision before making it public. But in the end, GNU is ANC. 3 letters, 1 word. No difference whatsoever. The ANC has made sure they've put themselves in a position where they stay in power while also convincing the people that they're not completely in power.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance, but they managed to find a way of doing it. Do you think people are waking up enough, or quicker now, or fast enough for the next election? Do you think normal people will kind of move it? Because it's always been like an interesting thing to me that how come after 30 years of seeing the same promises broken, people do not, okay, this is enough now. I mean, how many chances do you want here? It feels to me like people never get there. Do you think they are waking up now?
Well, a little bit of them are waking up. And the ones who always saw through the lies are finally glad that there's someone to call it out. You know, like I'll give you an example. Most of us truth tellers on YouTube and the radio stations like yourselves, the one you always know that there will be people listening to you, and that's the people who support what you say, who support the truth. But they're also not the reason why you started. You started not because you knew they'd agree with you. You started to go and fetch the other sheep that have been misled. You know, I always like to see my YouTube channel as a movement where I'm the shepherd and these are members who would like to be led to the light, the truth. And it's like the story in the Bible. The shepherd doesn't worry about the sheep that are behind him that he's looking after. He is worried about the sheep that went astray. So he could leave all his 14 sheep to go and fetch that one. That's what I'm doing with my The Sama Sambit movement on YouTube. I'm literally leaving all the ones who already know the truth to go and fetch those who don't, right? I'm willing to go and fetch that EFF kid who still believes it's the whites' fault we're in this mess. I'm willing to go and fetch that Muslim kid who still believes there's no hope for this country. I'm willing to go and fetch that bitter middle-aged person who still believes there's no turning back for South Africa at this point. I'm willing to leave all the other already converted members to go and fetch those who haven't heard the light, who haven't heard the truth, you know, who haven't heard the voice of good. Some have been hearing the voice of evil for so long, they can't make a difference between what's right and what's wrong anymore. You know, it's like what I mentioned earlier. We're in a toxic relationship with the government and the people. We've been blinded by nostalgia. Every time the elections come about, we're reminded of the very harsh past we have. Just like how an abusive husband would try and remind a wife of the abusive childhood she had, so that she could be convinced that the abuse she endures in her marriage with him is nothing compared to the one she experienced as a kid and could also be right. I don't care how much abuse you went through before, no amount of abuse is right. The ANC has convinced its people in South Africa that no matter how much wrong they do, it's somehow right and we should still vote for them because they freed us that one time in 1994. And as long as they will continue to blackmail us emotionally and exploit us like that, we will forever be victims to their emotional blackmail degrees, as I like to call it, because they are masters of this. They are masters of psychology. They are psychological masterminds who run the ANC, who inform them and teach them how to indoctrinate us, indoctrinate our children, write the textbooks, try and flip the coin, try and villainize a certain person, tell us about how no one is there if the ANC isn't there. You know, all these external influences are what play part to us voting for the ANC all the time. I wouldn't be surprised if the ANC wins the elections again, not because the people know they're doing something right, but because the people have been pushed to a point where they're afraid of what would happen if the ANC weren't in power. They've been in power for so long, the people are afraid of what would happen if they weren't. You know, like, it's scary now to think of a South Africa where the ANC is not in power because they're the ones who saved us from the oppressive power. That's what some people think. And as much as they're partially right in it, that is no excuse for the ANC to emotionally exploit them and increase the prices, which will cause them to spend more of their money. You know, so in the end, it's emotional blackmail. Emotional blackmail is what's got us to this point, and it is emotional blackmail that will make us vote for them, you know, in the next election, which is, you know, God forbid we do something like that. But obviously, the people of South Africa have brains, and they will do what they think is best because everyone has a right to their own opinions. As long as we're still breathing in the end, there's always a hope for tomorrow. And there are definitely a lot of people waking up. I'm really happy to see that there's a lot of people who actually agree with the things I say, you know, who subscribe to the channel, who watch the videos because they just want to hear something different from what they've been hearing 24/7, 7 days a week in the mainstream media. And I will forever appreciate that because there's people who want to hear the truth, you know, not people who want to completely oppress, you know, the truth, but those who want to hear it.
I mean, somewhere, I guess, you would need to say to yourself, well, what I see in the news, what they say is kind of not what's happening in practice. Somewhere that dissonance needs to get your attention at least. Let's hope to change. Yeah, it's a difficult thing for me. I always think of how do we benefit people by talking about this stuff? And you hope that somewhere, like you call, the lost sheep, and somewhere and somehow what we say will get somebody's attention to start thinking about, okay, well, maybe it's not what it looks like. And it's an interesting thing because it's not dumb people that go for the others. It's like clever people, studied people, a lot of, and it seems like they're like almost under a spell that they can't see through the obvious mismatch between what's being said and what's being done. But let's hope, that's what we do, why we do what we do. And you do a really good job of that. And
thank you. People will always hear the truth.
Okay.
And the truth always has its unique way of coming out.
And hopefully the truth will set the people free in the end.
Most definitely.
It's usually I'm an optimist. Every now and again, it's like I'll pack my bags and go. I don't know where, but the honest truth is, I don't want to go anywhere, man. That's if I look at I've got family all over the world by now, like most people in South Africa, and it's. I don't want to move anywhere. I tell you what, I tell people I'll take Malema any day to be able to stay here. You just, hope for better. And at the very worst, let's hope we don't get there, is that everything that will get people's attention. If the system breaks down completely, we live with a broken system by now. I mean, all the state-run stuff, they're on their knees, but it's not like dead, finished yet. Maybe if we don't have any Eskom, any sewage, any service, like for 3 months, people will go, no, this is enough. We need something that works. Maybe I've got a friend who say it's like being nauseous when you're sick, but you stop yourself from throwing up. You need to throw up to get better. And maybe we need that. Yeah. Everything must implode spectacularly so that people will not be able to say, well, they're just trying to and whatever. It needs to crash.
Definitely. This is tough love.
Maybe.
What we're doing is tough love. I always say in my channel, and it's even a banner when you get in there, the truth is never comfortable, but it's the only thing worth speaking. If you're going to start with anything, just tell them the truth. That's how you break, emotional chains.
Yeah.
It's tough love we're giving South African citizens. They may not want to hear it now, but they're going to thank us for it when they've realized that, oh, snap, we've been exploited. And they woke us up. Now we can sleep again.
It's a crazy thing to me that the people usually out of love who speaks up are the ones getting blamed for not being the loving ones or not trying to help or whatever you want to call it. I know that's from a Christian perspective. I mean, if you speak out about anything, you will get called the whatever. The racist, biggest, sexist, whatever it is that you're talking about. The fact that you're doing this in love because you know the better. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny how you know from a Christian perspective what is better. And we live in the era now where if you call somebody a name without any evidence, nothing, just by calling somebody, you're a racist, that it shuts it down completely. And they're like, oh, well, it's a racist thing, so.
Corn, I always used to joke. I always used to joke with a friend of mine, Ronaldo Jose, who was also a YouTuber. I used to joke with him and say, man, what's stopping a lady I've never seen in my entire life from opening a gender-based violence case against me, and then my reputation is ruined forever? People have that hatred, and people are willing to go that far to ruin you. If the government can go as far as they've gone to put the country to its knees and to the position it's in, then how far is a single human able to go?
Yeah, I've got a thing like that as well. That I think I keep it in the back of my mind. I hope it doesn't happen, but there's things like that. I mean, I've done stupid things in my life. So if they want to, because I seen a part of talking about Ronaldo. He did some stupid things, said some stupid things. like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it almost doesn't matter what you do now. And if you look at, like big political leaders or big religious leaders that they get nailed years afterwards, or even if it is yesterday. I mean, I do silly stuff on a daily basis. If somebody wants to expose me for being stupid on a good day, man, I'll be in trouble every day.
Definitely.
In a way, I feel we lost our humanity. In a way, nothing is like just we people. We battle. We triumphant over certain stuff. We battle longer with other stuff. And the grace of being a human, the grace of developing, the grace of making faults, but you're not useless or stupid because of you're learning and you're moving forward. It is just like everything needs to be rigid and strict and is name calling and bad mouthing and hatred. It's a really strange world to me in that regards. But that's where we live, and we need to hopefully be the light, and the salt, and do what we can and say what we know is the truth, believe is the truth, and let people make up their minds. That's what all we can do, eh?
That's true. There will be consequences.
On a personal note, again, do you make a living doing what you do? Is that how you earn your income?
Well, I earn my income in many ways with my YouTube channel, right? There's the AdSense, which is, the money you get from the adverts that are played on your videos. And then there's the sponsorships you get. But I haven't had a sponsor deliberately for any of my videos recently. And then there's also merch, right? Like where you advertise your product, like Sama Sambit shirts or sneakers or hoodies. Those are really the three main ways I make my income online. I want to say Nesfas helps, but it doesn't. The last time I got a payment from Nesfas for varsity reasons was 2 years ago. And I decided to stop relying on it when I said, from now onwards, I will no longer rely on another to achieve my independence. I will do what must be done. I will go through what must be gone through. I will suffer as much as I need to. I will shed as many tears as I must, as long as in the end, I don't have to rely on the same people who promise me the world and give me nothing, then I will be fine. Nesfas is really sad. You see all these students having to do terrible, terrible things just to get by because Nesfas doesn't give them the check they were told would look after them while they're in university. Having all these teenage girls coming from rural areas in Mdantsane and eThekwini, going into UJ and so forth, and then having Nesfas turn on them when they're already there and already learning, and they have nowhere to go to, nobody to turn to.
Terrible.
Now what? How do they pay the rent? They'll have to turn into very, very harsh methods to pay it. And, it's a very sensitive topic, but that's the harsh reality. What else can they do? They want to learn. They want to gain their independence. They want to be parents to their own kids one day. And
that's
if you have
giant
business
right there.
Like that turning on you,
the reason I'm asking is just,
move for them to save
I'm going to stop the thing here more or less within the next few minutes.
Then all the child has to do is to look for independence and interdependence for that matter.
The reason I wanted to find out about your, income avenues kind of thing, Sama, is just to let people know where can they find you if they like what you do, which a lot of them obviously do. How can they help you to do what you do? I know on your pages you've got banking details on there, right? On your YouTube, I watch you on YouTube.
Yes.
So
yes, that is great.
Just do a little bit of your own ad here. Tell people on which platforms you are, where they can find you. And how they can help you do what you do.
Thank you. Thank you for the chance. And anyone watching this can find me on YouTube, my mainstream platform. They can find me on TikTok. They can find me on Instagram. They can find me on Twitter as well. Those are my main platforms. So it's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. You want to see my content? Then those are the main platforms to watch me in. Luckily, I don't only upload on YouTube. And there's also some extra exclusive content for you to watch if you do follow me on these other platforms. There's no price tag next to it. Awesome. It doesn't cost anything. All you need to do is just click that subscribe button, hit the follow button. It helps me more than you think. You watch the video, if you see it as worth your time and if you agree with what it says, or if you see it as thought-provoking and if it gets you thinking. And also, I leave banking details in the description of my video, right, for you to donate whatever you can to help me and the cause, right? YouTube can be pretty cruel sometimes. Sometimes you make a lot of money and then YouTube takes about 60% of that salary before they send it to you, which also has a shipping fee. And then you get whatever remainder of that. That's business for you, right? They also have to make profit, unfortunately. And it's just the hardship. Some of us content creators really go through some of the silent hardships we silently carry with us. I also have a Discord server. It's a exclusive Discord server, which is also free. It's a Discord server where I motivate young minds to join. I always motivate young minds to join in if they want to, have debates, learn more values of life. It's a self-improvement program. Not really a program, but a nice little community of little like-minded, free-thinking young individuals who want to think for themselves, make their own decisions. In there, you'll get business advice from actual business owners. If you ask, you'll get content creation advice from content creators like myself. Study advice as well, because many of us are students. Relationship advice as well, because it's a wide age range. It's from about 15 years old to about 45 years old in that server. In the end, we just want a great community of people from all countries, doesn't have to be South African, who can think for themselves. And joining the Discord server will be very much worth your time, because that's where your younger self can learn some values of life.
Oh, wow.
Maybe you want to increase your devotion to God again. And maybe the person want to increase their devotion to God again, and they just want to find a way back in without really being shamed for it. That is your inner circle.
That is awesome. I really think there's a very strong point to be made for community stuff online. People are living such desperately, almost lonely and separated lives. Since COVID, the lockdowns, we've moved onto our own little world. And if you're lucky enough to have connectivity in your home, you can stay there forever. Order in, study there, work there, never see another human being ever. And it's a terrible state. But I think communities like that is incredibly important because we were made for community. I believe that. So thank you, Sama. Thank you so much for today, man. Thank you for your insights and your opinions on stuff. So, dear friends, if you didn't know about Sama until today, then I'm glad I could introduce you. I hope you go and watch his stuff. There's such a lot of good content in there of a young man who's not afraid to say the king does not have his clothes on. We can all see it, so can we just mention it and make a plan and get the poor man dressed or make a plan?
And the funny thing about this king, the funny thing about this king is that he's not even ashamed enough to try and cover the only piece of underwear he has on. He's just walking freely like nothing is wrong, while everyone else covers their eyes in disgust and have to pay more just to not see him like that.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that another day because there's a whole thing about that as well. Listen, thank you so much. I wish you all the best of luck and good success with what you do, even commercially. And God bless you really for being a voice, unafraid. And good luck. I hope we can speak again soon. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, for giving me this chance, and take care. And I think I found a new radio channel to listen to now.
Lekka Koffie word op die heel beste natuurlike metodes verbou in die hoof koffieproduserende lande in Afrika. Jy kan sommer die kwaliteit proe. Spesialis koffie van ander gebiede is ook beskikbaar. Jy kan jou bestelling plaas by huwelied.co.za. Dis beskikbaar in verskillende sterktes, as bone of gemaal en in 3 verskillende groottes verpakking. Onthou, as dit nie sê Lekka Koffie nie, dan is dit nie lekker koffie nie.
Luister nou na Radio Nuwe Lied. Jou Christelike lewenswyse radiostasie. Klets, kuier, luister en leer in Afrikaans.